What is happening, Browns fans, football fans, followers of the OBR.com and OBR streaming network? My name is Joe Mazzullo. This is Pete Smith. And this is the first official Browns offseason edition of the Pete and Joe Show. Pete, we lost a man this week.
It's not.
I know. I'm right there with you. Lots of firings across the league. Kevin Stefanski was let go yesterday, and Andrew Berry was retained. How do we feel about that one?
Well, I think it goes back to Jimmy Haslam's messaging before the season and at the owners' meetings where he said, the Browns are in this big hole with the Deshaun Watson thing, that they were going to take at least a year, if not more, to find their quarterback. And then fast forward to we're firing the coach because he didn't win enough. To me, these things are not congruent. And, the way it was handled, they win games that absolutely mean nothing at this point.
Yep.
I'm happy for guys that won, like Joel Bitonio. I assume this is it now. I'm happy for him to be able to go out as a winner. But, I look at what was on that offense in that last game, and almost none of those guys are going to be back.
Yeah.
Almost nobody. And most people are going to forget most of those guys in 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not going to forget, Fernando Mendoza or Dante Moore if those guys become franchise quarterbacks and they haunt you for years and years and years. So that's where I come away very unsatisfied with the overall process. Now, having said that, I think it's crap what was done with Kevin Stefanski. But if you're asking me, would I rather have obviously I would have rather kept everybody intact. But if you're then following up and saying, well, I can't have Kevin Stefanski, would I rather still have the front office? Yes, I would rather still have the front office. I would not say, well, in the sense of fair play, because I think the whole notion is crap.
Yeah.
I'd rather keep those people in place because I think they're equipped to do the job. And honestly, I think they're the best chance that the Browns have to not Jimmy Haslam this thing up worse. I think that part is important.
Let me ask you something, Pete, because there's a million directions the Browns can go with this, right? And as somebody who's a supporter of the front office, because it's not that I'm not a supporter of the front office, I don't like the idea of marrying a new head coach with Andrew Berry if Andrew Berry's on something of a hot seat. Like if next year doesn't go the way that we want and you're moving on from Andrew Berry, you're moving on from the head coach as well. Like, let's be honest, it's a one and done scenario.
I don't think it's an unrealistic scenario. I don't think it's an unrealistic scenario that we're doing this again in 12 months.
I agree completely. And that's my whole thing with moving off of Stefanski. It angers me enough, right, that we fire Stefanski and then immediately before Harbaugh, of course, he's the number one coach on the market. The Giants want an interview. The Falcons want to interview. Anybody relevant wants an interview with Kevin Stefanski. And here we are, literally, I can't think of a candidate that has been mentioned on X or on Facebook or Instagram or anywhere where there isn't a slew of people in the mentions, like with the throw up emoji. Nobody's happy with any of these candidates.
Yeah, and this is ultimately the problem, and this is one of the things I didn't like about it. And obviously, John Harbaugh changes the whole game. But if you are allowing another team to come out of this offseason and go, we hired a 2-time coach of the year who went to the playoffs and did all these other things, and the Browns are, let's be honest, likely to hire somebody who's a first-time head coach.
Yeah.
And we're going to be talking about, well, they got to learn on the job and all the other crap that comes with it. We're sitting here going, this other team is getting all kinds of kudos for hiring it. And it took 30 seconds for Kevin Stefanski to be out the door before everybody was hailing him as the hero, which I knew was going to happen. This is what drives me nuts. All these people are like, oh, Jimmy Haslam's worried about how he's viewed by the team. The dude almost got a parade for being fired.
Yeah.
This is the thing where it just drives me insane. And there's all these people who are like, oh, Kevin Stefanski can't coach and all this other crap. It's like, I heard people trying to make the argument that this notion that Kevin Stefanski was a very popular candidate was invented by his agent.
Mm-hmm.
Like, who are we kidding? It was instantly going to be a huge candidate, and he is. And he may take a small backseat to John Harbaugh because John Harbaugh's,
he's John Harbaugh. Yeah.
But it wouldn't shock me if there's a couple of these teams who are like, John Harbaugh doesn't fit necessarily what we want. We want somebody who's going to be here maybe longer term than that. John Harbaugh, I think, is 62.
Yeah, or we want a guy who specializes on a certain side of the ball and can help with quarterback development, which, I mean, in theory, Stefanski can. We saw Stefanski utilize, and anytime he had a decent veteran, Stefanski was productive. The question with him is, how can he bring along a young quarterback, and how can we, see him work in that light? And it was a very limited sample size, and the defense obviously played a big part in it. You went 3-4 with Shedeur Sanders down the stretch with no offensive line, receivers that are, like around the league considered the worst, if not one of the worst groups in the league. I mean, and I'm not saying it was all Shedeur and it was Stefanski's brilliance in coaching and making it happen, but look at what he was working with. Like, we go back to 2023 when he goes on this run with Joe Flacco. We win 11 games. We make the playoffs. He's a genius. He gets an extension in the offseason, and then he's given the roster and the offensive roster and depth chart that he's had the last 2 years, and we sucked. And people think that it wasn't a talent thing. They think Stefanski forgot how to coach. Like, that's what blows my mind is I heard people on the radio saying he's taking steps back.
Yeah.
You do that with bad quarterback playing no offensive line.
Yeah, here's the thing. Like, the second John Harbaugh came on the market, like the argument I kept hearing was, well, there's 32 jobs. There's 32 jobs. The second John Harbaugh comes on the market, that argument goes out the window. Mm-hmm. It's gone because now there are not 32 jobs. There are really good jobs, and that you every issue that your team has immediately stands out to you because now you're sitting there going, okay, it's not just we're trying to find the right candidate. Oh, we'll find somebody that's good. It's why the hell should John Harbaugh come work for the Cleveland Browns? And now all your warts show up. Are you sitting here going, oh, John Harbaugh can't wait to work with Shedeur Sanders, Dylan Gabriel, and Deshaun Watson? Is that what's going to get him to Cleveland? Is he going to be super excited about the offensive line here? Is he going to be excited about all the wide receivers they have? Like, all of your issues immediately stand out, and you look very flawed, and you sit there and you go, is this a good job? Is Jimmy Haslam a good owner? All of these things pop out, and all of a sudden you look very vulnerable. And now you sit here and you're feeling very inadequate all of a sudden. And yeah, people go, oh, John Harbaugh, families, Browns fans, and all this other stuff. This will work, and all this other stuff. And look, I would love it to happen. It would certainly make the firing of Kevin Stefanski feel more valid.
Yeah.
But I'm not getting my hopes up based on what they've got to offer because they don't have much. You can say, oh, they've got a great defense and they will have money to spend and they have draft picks and all this other stuff. But I mean, you've got Harold Fannin, you've got Quinshon Judkins coming off a pretty serious injury. Yeah. Jerry Jeudy's a fine receiver. And then, figure it out.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I feel like I'm in the middle. I think the Browns, I think there's 8 openings, right? And I feel like there's 2 groups. Your first group is going to be the Ravens, the Falcons, and the Giants.
Ravens are way up here.
Oh, yeah.
They are number 1 with a bullet.
That's the number 1 job, and it's not even close. Agreed.
No, he's not going to get that one.
You have a Hall of Fame quarterback.
Yeah. I don't think John Harbaugh is getting that job, so we're safe on that front. But everybody knows. In fact, like there's reporting, and we'll see how this bears out. But at least one team, probably the Miami Dolphins, has reached out to John Harbaugh about that coaching job.
Yeah, I'd be shocked if there weren't more teams that have a head coach in place, but we're like, hey, is this worth the talk?
Well, there's another element to that whole thing, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah,
if you're Joe Schoen, you got to be sitting here going, do I start packing my boxes now?
Oh, he better hope they hire Kevin Stefanski. Kevin Stefanski will work with Joe Schoen. John Harbaugh.
I don't know. I don't know if John Harbaugh has some grand demands of anything.
No.
But Joe Schoen has not been great for the Giants by any stretch. So it's more of a question of if Giants ownership basically goes, if this is going to make it more appealing, we will happily throw this guy out. In fact, we will open him up right in front of you if you need to see blood. Like that, it's just that's the other part. And I think I think in some small way, Andrew Berry actually gives the Browns a slight edge in that regard. And that's the other reason I think Andrew Berry is actually good for this, because who was Andrew Berry's predecessor with the Cleveland Browns? Sashi Brown.
Mm-hmm.
Sashi Brown is currently the team president of the Baltimore Ravens. So if presumably, I assume Sashi Brown and John Harbaugh had a pretty good relationship. There's some, sense that he likes that setup and he could work with Andrew Berry. I think that actually could work in their favor. Now, I think similarly, if John Harbaugh was to really put his foot down, I could see Andrew Berry getting thrown right out for that.
200%.
Unlikely.
Trent Baalke with Liam Cohen. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think that's a likely scenario, but I would, I've seen other people throw that possibility out there for everybody. I don't think that's the case. I think John Harbaugh is the special case where you could see, I don't know if I like Andrew Berry, and he's already out the door before he finishes that sentence.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I get that too. And when it comes to somebody like Harbaugh, you have to pay the bad franchise tax in those scenarios. You got to pony up. You got to pay a little more. That's just the reality of it.
But this is the problem. You know what John Harbaugh was making at the end of his tenure with the Ravens? $16 million a year. Like, this is the other thing is there was just throw money at him. What is he going to spend it on? He spends 300 days a year in the facility. Like, where is he going? What does he need money for? So, like, this is the problem. What can you really offer somebody like that that's going to make them, more appealing? So I don't think finances have done it. I imagine he's amassed quite a bit of money in his 18 years as a head coach with the Baltimore Ravens. That's an issue, I think.
But Pete, both his parents are from Ohio.
No, his family is Browns fans. Now,
if we can swing that, man.
And this is the problem. Like, once people find out that your family was either Browns fans or you're from the state, like, it's over. That you got the tattoo, the birthmark, whatever you want to call it. People just cannot control themselves.
The gets us meter goes through the roof.
Yes, there's all kinds of. There are some other candidates in that boat that I hesitate to mention, but yes, undoubtedly.
Johnny Gannon?
No. No, and I cannot believe that a certain local reporter immediately thought that would be an excellent candidate, 15-36.
Oh, we got a whole list. I got like 20 names to throw at you, Peter. I can't wait. It's going to be.
There's one name I bet you can wait to throw.
Oh, I can't wait for that. I can't wait to throw that name, but we'll get there eventually. Yeah. Before we dive
what a load of crap.
Crazy into this. What's that?
What a load of crap. But anyway, look. The other part that bothers me is the Kevin Stefanski element, and what I think is going to be hard. Look, I genuinely think that Andrew Berry can run a really good coaching search. I think he will do a good job. Now, ultimately, the Browns have run multiple good coaching searches and then picked the wrong candidate.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, the last guy who's got to make that call is one Jimothy Haslam, who was presented with the option of hire Sean McDermott or Hugh Jackson. He picked Hugh Jackson. Was presented with the option of Freddie Kitchens or Kevin Stefanski. He picked Freddie Kitchens. Then
that was John Dorsey. He chose John Dorsey.
True. Finally got Kevin Stefanski. So, like, I think Andrew Berry will do a very good job, like in terms of finding good candidates. And we'll get into the one that I think is not real soon enough. The other guy's really interesting to me that has been mentioned as an actual interview. But I think they're going to find guys, and it's going to be people you have to Google. I think the press conference, the way he phrased it, I don't think you're going to get if they get John Harbaugh, it's a different deal. I don't expect them to get a guy that people are going to be comfortable with. And we do this every time.
Yeah.
All these people will come up with these lists, and I see them all the time. And my immediate reaction is cross off the first 6 because it never happens that way.
Yeah.
And then we always end up going somewhere else. Kevin Stefanski is in that group, and he was the best of the bunch. Like, the most popular candidates that have been linked to the Browns under Jimmy Haslam have been Hugh Jackson, Chip Kelly, and Josh McDaniels.
Yeah.
None of them could coach. And obviously Chip Kelly, the Browns didn't get, but like people were ready to like give up children for him. and that's the thing. But like by and large, they get guys most people haven't heard of, and that doesn't mean they're going to be wrong. I mean, obviously, the ultimate example of that is the Steelers hiring Mike Tomlin. Nobody knew who the hell Mike Tomlin was when they hired him, but it was a good hire. So I don't.
He was the defensive backs coach in Minnesota too. Was he defensive coordinator?
He may have been by that time, but he had largely been a DB's coach, and
Yeah.
I suspect there's going to be a couple guys like that that are going to be sort of off the beaten path, sort of not the natural thing. Like the way Andrew Berry phrased it to me did not scream coordinator.
Yeah,
that doesn't mean, and he could. I'm just saying, like, I thought the way he talked really sort of set the tone for trying to get people to sort of like not get their hopes up. And I don't mean that in like they're going to hire somebody crappy, in terms of getting your heart set on some option, which now immediately goes out the window now that John Harbaugh's out here. But like everybody's immediate reaction was, man, they got to go get Cliff Kingsbury, or they've got to go get defensive coordinator X or whatever. And I don't think that's necessarily how this works, because how many times have we seen the hot shot coordinator who cannot be the head coach?
Yep.
It's a different job. And that whole element. So I think he can do this well. Obviously, it comes down to the guy making the decision has to decide making the right one. The other element that I'm very curious to sort of find out is when ownership comes out and goes, I don't want to lose Jim Schwartz. Does that mean that, we really like him to stay as defensive coordinator, or are they setting this thing up in a way where it's basically Jimmy Haslam really likes Jim Schwartz to be the head coach, and Andrew Berry is essentially trying to get a field of guys that are maybe trying to unseat him as the favorite? And I don't know the answer to that. I think the news of today may change that dynamic if that was the case.
Yeah.
But I guess I'm curious to know or learn as we get going into this, and as we're sort of, getting some feelers out, how open-minded are they really? Andrew Berry seems very open-minded. Is Jimmy Haslam? And I don't know the answer to that yet.
Well, what I think is going to be such an interesting dynamic is exactly what they're looking for at the position. Like, are you looking for a culture guy? Are you looking for, I mean, they said in the presser, a leader of men, like they want somebody with a commanding presence and all that stuff. But I mean, that's a lot of, I don't know. That's just some of that stupid football talk that they like to use in the media. I mean, what are they really looking for? Are they going to look for an offensive guy that's going to right the ship on that side of the ball? I mean, if they go for a defensive guy, you're almost, I mean, that's dunzo for Jim Schwartz. I don't see how that would work in any capacity. And how does Tommy Rees factor into all this? We heard Mary Kay reporting that they desperately wanted to keep him, but what does that even mean without a head coach?
Which is the other part that just made me annoyed about the whole firing process. It's like, well, we really love both our coordinators, but we're going to fire and jeopardize everybody.
Yeah.
And, that whole thing is weird. But the second you fire Kevin Stefanski, all bets are off. Like, you have to at least be recognizing the possibility that everybody can leave. And again, one of the things I did not like about this firing of Kevin Stefanski is I really like some of the assistants on this group.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like the idea of losing Jason Tarver, and it doesn't mean they won't. Jason Tarver has been here for 2 head coaches. I'd really like to keep Mike Bloomgren around as the offensive line coach. There are other guys in that capacity. Ephraim Band is a really good safeties coach. But if Kevin Stefanski goes to, Atlanta or something and goes, hey, Tommy, do you want to come with me? Tommy may be like, oh, I can go call plays with the Falcons. Sounds good. Like,
yeah.
Or he may call Jim Schwartz and be like, hey, Jim, you want to come down here? And he might.
I got a mean couple of edge rushers for you.
Yeah. Like that's the part that people don't seem to understand is like Kevin Stefanski could theoretically just pick up the whole staff and go. Now, does it really necessarily work like that? Not necessarily. Some of these guys may be perfectly happy here. The money may be better here. I don't know. But but the second you pull that trigger, now it's all out there for the potential. Now, the other side of that is obviously you could hopefully do better. But my concern immediately was the second Kevin Stefanski is fired, you are worse. And even if you get a really good coach hire that's ultimately going to be a really good coach, I question the ability to get the staff in place immediately that's going to be as good. It took a minute for the Browns to get where they were with this group. They have a lot of really good coaches. So that's where it gets very tricky. So they could nail that first hire, and then it's going to be sketchy the rest of the way, and that's really frustrating when you're trying to build an offense, which is going to be the whole thing. I mean, at least on that part, Andrew Berry was very upfront. Yeah. Not that he could really hide from it. And then, the other sort of issue that's sort of sitting out there is the defense they've built is incredibly specific. Yes, Andrew Berry noted that some of the guys even like gave away the game on this. He's like, yes, some of the guys are scheme versatile. Yeah, Myles Garrett is scheme versatile.
Yeah.
I don't doubt that Carson Schwarzenegger can succeed in a variety of schemes, though. I think the Brown scheme is really, really good for him. But like Denzel Ward isn't. Tyson Campbell
neither is Tyson.
Yeah, like so you have a really good set of corners right now.
Mm-hmm.
Are you willing to sort of blow that up and go a different direction? Are you willing? Does Alex Wright fit every system? Not really. So are you sort of pinned in a little bit? Maybe, and maybe there's a world where John Harbaugh sits there and goes, "Man, I can go to Cleveland and get Jim Schwartz," and everybody gets really, really excited about that prospect. But like, it can only be so easy, and it usually just isn't that smooth and easy.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And unless it's somebody like Harbaugh or somebody high profile. I mean, outside of Harbaugh, even your high profile guys come with baggage and question marks. Like there's just a lot. Like Brian Flores is so popular. I think he's an excellent coach. I like borderline phenomenal. But what he did in Miami, ridiculous, to a top 5 talent at quarterback that he was the head coach when they selected, is like borderline. Like that's like an unhireable thing for a head coach. Like Absolutely. You almost can't trust that guy in that scenario again. And for anybody who doesn't know the story with Brian Flores, okay, when they drafted Tua, Brian Flores, it was basically split, right? The front office wanted Tua, ownership, more importantly, wanted Tua. The coaching staff wanted Justin Herbert. We all know how the rookie seasons went. Justin Herbert set the touchdown record. Tua was coming off a hip injury, was a smaller, less physically impressive player anyway. His whole game is up here. That's going to take a quarterback a longer time. So it was a slower developmental thing. Brian Flores straight heckled him and tore him down to the studs every day in practice. Told him to his face, we should have drafted the kid from the Chargers. We should have. How'd I get stuck with you? All that stuff. And this is all from Tua, from like accounts around the Dolphins. Like it was as unbelievably unprofessional.
Yeah, that's the right word.
Yeah, it's just it's incredible to me. And I think the guy's a phenomenal coach. I love his message. His whole thing. TNT takes no talent. All the things that take no talent, you control. Like there's so many things that guy does that I ate up. I absolutely loved it. But when you do that to your quarterback, who you picked in the top 5, I don't know that I can trust you to run a team.
He, reputation-wise, he was very extreme. Mm-hmm. The guys who love him absolutely love him. The guys who hate him cannot stand him.
Yeah.
And you can sit there and go, okay, well, then we just got to find a whole bunch of guys that love him. I mean, okay, it's 53 guys, man. You got, and if you're drafting these guys, it doesn't work. How quickly are you going to find out like this isn't going to work? That's not a good way to operate. So, I mean, it just as a head coach, as your top representative of the organization, he was downright unprofessional and childish. Like, and just, I don't know how you come back from that and go, well, I've learned my lesson and I'm going to be great from here on out. I'm going to be super supportive of whoever I get. When you are a team that's sitting here going, we probably got to get a young quarterback and it may not be the one you want, or it's, if it's working with the guys that are here in Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders, like what would that dynamic be like? So for me, that's a huge issue, not to mention the fact that I don't think, just to the point I made before, I don't think Tyson Campbell or Denzel Ward fit anything he wants to do. No. But look, again, he's a brilliant coach in terms of what he does defensively, but that doesn't even get to the point that he's still suing the league. Yeah. I don't know how that's going to go over. And we're going to find out real fast. How many interviews is he actually going to get for a head coaching job? Like, his contract runs out with Minnesota and the immediate reaction isn't, hey, he's going to get interviewed by this. It's, man, the Dallas Cowboys really like him for defensive coordinator. And
The only other team I've heard that might be in on him is the rumor with the Raiders and Brady tapping into his old Patriots buddies and getting him and Dable.
Well, there are
But
people
it's
sort of
early for all
spitballing
that.
the idea of Brian Flores and Cliff Kingsbury going to Baltimore. Like, okay, I guess. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know how serious that is. Like, if I follow the Ravens pattern, they're going to do the most incestuous thing they do every hiring cycle and just go to the other Harbaugh and hire an assistant. So they'll hire Jesse Minter.
Yeah.
Like, that's the move.
How do you feel about Jesse Minter? That's a rising name that's on a lot of lists. I know he's a defensive guy, and it doesn't, make perfect sense because of what we have with Schwartz and everything. But if you find your guy moving forward, it's like Andrew Berry. If you fall in love with your head coach, you want to give him what he wants.
Well, one, I would be interested in interviewing Minter. I don't know him as far as like I couldn't pick him out of a lineup. I don't know how he talks or any of that stuff, but I'd certainly be interested in talking to him. My overall approach to this is I'm not getting hung up on what they do in terms of side of the ball. I will get hung up if, like, I'll use Mike Tomlin as an example. Yes, he's a defensive head coach, but he's also got about 2 decades of can't build an offense to tell me something. Mm-hmm. Whereas, Minter might be a really good defensive coach who can be the leader of a team and do those things. And ultimately that's what you need to do. And then if he can make the right hires on offense, if he can do those things, then great. I don't care. I'll use Brian Billick as an example. Brian Billick, for people who are old enough to remember, was the offensive guru with the Minnesota Vikings. All these offenses. If he gets hired by the Baltimore Ravens and their offense stinks forever, but they're really good defensively.
But he wins the Super Bowl with the greatest defense ever in Trent Dilfer.
Right. So the Tampa Bay Buccaneers winning with defense and sort of bringing in John Gruden as a mercenary type thing. Like ultimately you got to get the leader first. And you cannot get hung up on side of the ball, because if you limit your talent, if you limit your hiring pool to that, you're already handling this wrong. And that's the problem. And if that was your issue, it's another thing where you should have said, okay, we're sticking with Kevin Stefanski for another year. Like, that's where you get caught up. So you just got to find the right guy. And, that's where John Harbaugh becomes an interesting proposition, because obviously he's now been a head coach for 18 years. But he's a special teams guy, which has its own sort of set of interesting elements to it, which can be beneficial. And there's at least one special teams coach I'm really intrigued by in terms of his work background that I think could be valuable if he's good enough to be a head coach. But I'm not worried about, I got to get an offensive guy. I think that's a foolish way to operate, even though I understand the frustration of the idea of, like, Mike McDonald is a fantastic coach on defense and has been great for the Seattle Seahawks. Mm-hmm. And your worry right now is if Clint Kubiak goes and gets hired somewhere else, are you suddenly going to be basically the Detroit Lions again, where they take a huge step back because they lost Ben Johnson, hired Johnny Morton, who they've now fired today as offensive coordinator, and the offense is nowhere near as good. And all of a sudden you're sitting there going, well, man, I wish we had an offensive coach, because then we don't lose that. So I understand that concept of it, but ultimately I got to get the right guy to lead the team first and foremost.
All right, Pete. So I'm going to need you to tell me why Mike McCarthy is a bad idea. And before you start, because I see you loading up on air in your chest so you can fire all this out, but I'm just going to throw some stuff at you. Okay. So we got 3 straight 12-win seasons sandwiched between a couple disappointing seasons that were injury marred and all the Jerry drama, all that stuff, right? But here's my thing with McCarthy. I know it's not going to be a sexy hire. I know the fan base is going to lose their minds and everybody's going to be pissed, and it's going to be.
No, it is a sexy hire because he won a Super Bowl. And when did he win that Super Bowl?
But that was like borderline the 90s, dude. That was a long time ago. 2011 is a long time ago.
2010, when Harold Fannin was in preschool.
First of all, Fannon's old for a rookie, okay? He's actually not. He's very young. So, okay. I understand that was a long time ago, right? But this is the guy that developed Aaron Rodgers. When he took over in Green Bay, he had Brett Favre. Like, look, you can say, is it? But all I know is that on paper, he was the steward of the Green Bay Packers that got Aaron Rodgers to go from his first game starting to a Pro Bowl level, eventually Hall of Fame level guy. And when he went to Dallas, he coached Dak to Dak's 3 best seasons of his career. Like I feel like this guy is going to raise the floor of our offense. And I look at this defense and I look at Jim Schwartz, and I think those two could work together. McCarthy's had 4 different defensive coordinators the last 4 years. I don't think he gives a rip who's coaching the other side of the ball. I think he's steady Eddie, man. And this team needs an adult offense. If we had a top 20 offense this year, Pete, we make the playoffs. Tell me why Mike McCarthy is incapable of getting us to a top 20 offense.
What is the
It's
worst?
not like he's going to come in on a power
Who's the
trip.
worst quarterback he's ever had as a head coach?
As a head coach?
Yeah, what's the worst quarterback he's ever had?
As a starter?
As a starter.
As a spot starter? I mean, I could say
Matt
Flynn. He got Matt Flynn, a free agent contract, Peter. How about every time what's his name? Who's the kid that was backing up the Ravens this year? Cooper Rush. Cooper Rush looked phenomenal under him in Dallas.
I don't know about phenomenal.
Maybe not phenomenal, but for Cooper Rush.
So to be clear, he's had Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers to Dak Prescott. The Browns have Shedeur Sanders, Dylan Gabriel, and Deshaun Watson. These things are not even remotely the same.
Okay. When he had Favre, yes, Favre was elite. When he had Rodgers, he was was it Rodgers' 3rd year or 4th year? I believe it was 2008, so that would have been his 4th year, right? That's when he took over the starting job. So he had
he had basically the end of his rookie contract.
Yeah, because they drafted Brian Baum in the 2nd round that year.
Yes.
Yeah.
So he has always had a great quarterback setup. When he left Green Bay, how did the players feel about him?
I mean, yeah, I'll give you that.
When he left Dallas, how did the players feel about him?
See, Well, I feel like you don't see a ton of, oh man, we fired the wrong guy, yada, yada, yada. You don't see a ton of that.
I saw it yesterday.
What's that?
I saw it yesterday.
From players?
Yes. Did you see DeJuan Jones? He was in tears.
I didn't see DeJuan, no. Grant
Delpit, absolutely furious.
Yeah.
I mean, and then you had this is the part where, like, I'm gonna let you in a little secret. Every player who's sitting there, man, I hope we talking about Jim Schwartz. Talk this idea of Jim Schwartz being the head coach.
Yep.
Every single one of those guys didn't want Stefanski to go. Every one of them, like
everyone.
That, other than maybe Myles Garrett, who's just a mercenary who doesn't care, but really likes Jim Schwartz. Yeah. Because look, you can reason that out pretty easily. He demanded a trade last year. I don't think he's super attached to Kevin Stefanski if he was trying to get out of Cleveland.
Of course.
But everybody else either flat out said it, like Joel Bitonio, Denzel Ward, Grant Delpit, DeJuan Jones, said it, or just said straight up, God, I hope they hire Jim Schwartz. If you're saying you wanted Jim Schwartz, you were probably not going to be like, man, I hope they get rid of Stefanski, because you knew this was a possibility that you're going to lose Schwartz. Yeah. So I've seen it. I saw it yesterday. I did not see that with Aaron Rodgers being upset over Mike McCarthy. And you can say part of that is you can say that
Aaron Rodgers hates his own family, Pete. He hates everybody. What are we talking about?
This is true. But nobody in Dallas misses Mike McCarthy. Nobody.
But I mean, realistically, though, what are we talking about? I don't care if the players like the head coach if they get results. If they get results. But I mean, Pete, honestly, I go from different ends of the spectrum. Part of me likes the idea of McCarthy because I think McCarthy raises the floor. He can pair with Schwartz. And if say we swing a trade for your boy Gino, or we figure out some veteran at the position, we might be able to make noise this year. I see that.
I agree.
And then I also see, you know what? I hope Andrew Berry picks whatever coordinator he likes, and everything just goes in the freaking tank, and we get the number 1 pick next year. And then we get our clean break and fresh start and all that stuff. I'm all over the map. I don't know what the hell I want them to do.
Stop wish casting me another freaking 0-something season. I can't.
You think it's me? You think it's me calling for it? It's the meanest thing you've ever said to me, Pete.
No, but this the problem is, like, I have a really difficult time with coaches who have been spoiled the entire way with the setup. He didn't build anything. You used the word. He was a steward. You need a guy who can come in here and they get a great defense. They got to build an offense. They got to build something. And that's where I sit there and go, Mike McCarthy is 60 some years old. He is well past his coaching prime. I mean, obviously he's similar age as John Harbaugh. So, I mean, it's like the same deal in that regard, but just in terms of his fastball, in terms of when he was at his best, Mike McCarthy lied his ass off when it came to preparing to interview for the Browns. And ultimately when he took the job at the Dallas Cowboys, he made up this notion that he went to PFF and studied all this analytical stuff. PFF still uses this as a running joke that Mike McCarthy is sitting in the basement doing their mock simulator. Like, this is who Mike McCarthy is. He is a liar and a fraud in those respects. And this is why he wears on players, because they see right through him and eventually get to a point where like they just freeze him out. They tune him out and they're ready to move on. And so like you get there and you can hold up the Super Bowl trophy and he won it. Give him all the credit in the world for that. But that was 15, 16 years ago at this point. So,
yeah. And that was Aaron Rodgers and Clay Matthews making phenomenal plays. Like the game was wild.
But he did it and obviously if you're going to win the Super Bowl, your team is stacked. Yeah. But he's always been in a really good situation. And that's where I get, I don't think Mike McCarthy wants this job. I'll be honest, based on what we've got. Yeah, I think if anything, Mike McCarthy knows exactly what he needs to be successful. And if he's going to get a look, and I don't think he will, he's going to get a look and go to a team that has a quarterback because he has to have one. Otherwise, what's he doing? Because I don't think he has that in his arsenal where he's going to, or he could take the Raiders job because he's going to get Fernando Mendoza or something like that. The Browns cannot offer that. So, unless they do something unexpected or can finagle a deal, whether it's Geno Smith, whether it's, Malik Willis, which seems really unlikely in that scenario, he's going to have to manufacture a quarterback and an offense for at least 1 year. And I've seen nothing, I think maybe it's unfair for me to say that because he has been spoiled and he just maybe hasn't been able to show off that skill set, but I have no reason to believe in that skill set. And therefore I'd be more interested in getting somebody probably 20 years younger who is an up and comer as opposed to trying to go, Mike McCarthy is the guy you hire if you're interested in Mike McCarthy to be a closer. You have the team set because that's what Dallas thought they were getting. Dallas had Dak. Dallas had all this stuff, and yet you had the 12-win seasons. All these things. You're sitting there going, "Yeah, this is Mike McCarthy's perfect spot." The Browns are the antithesis of a perfect spot for Mike McCarthy.
Yeah, right. I mean, look, that makes sense, but
yeah, that's right. Yeah,
it's not even that it's right. It's basically you're not giving him credit for Rodgers' development, but it's also a totally different situation because he was surrounded by Pro Bowl talent. And that had been in place and all that stuff.
That and I'm extraordinarily jealous of the Green Bay Packers because they don't have an owner. And you can just sit there and develop quarterbacks and they don't sit there and go, he's got to be on the field. We've got to move on and all this other crap. So you get to develop a guy. You get to sit there and develop Aaron Rodgers for 4 years. You get to sit there and develop Jordan Love for 5 years. And it's a wonder that they can produce quarterbacks when you give them the time to just do it. And do it the right way. And look, the approach that was taken with Aaron Rodgers is awesome. They tore his entire throwing motion and mechanics down and built him up from scratch. You know where he's not going to be able to do that? Here. Yeah. So, I just, no, I'm not interested and I win. I
don't, first of all, I didn't hear a bell. Okay. And second of all, no, look, there's no version of this where you can convince me that McCarthy doesn't raise the floor of our offense significantly. He just
higher than what? Higher than what?
What do you mean higher than what? Higher than unknown. It's like the
here's the other part of this.
You can take the boat or you can get the mystery box, which could be a boat.
But the problem you run into, and again, this comes back to Jimmy Haslam, you had a floor. You just fired it. So the problem is you're not comparing Mike. One, you can't compare Mike McCarthy just against the unknown because he's ultimately going to be compared against who? Kevin Stefanski.
But that doesn't matter because Stefanski's not an option.
He's
I'm
not.
not saying get
But if
Mike
he's
McCarthy and
fired-
get Stefanski out of here. I'm saying for the pool that I'm looking at, the fact that I like the defense as is, I like Jim Schwartz as is, who can I get that can come on the offensive side of the ball and I know is at least going to be legit? He's an NFL coach and he's successful, Pete. He's 49-35 in Dallas. Dallas isn't always the easiest place to coach and win.
You're not wrong, but again, Dak Prescott makes a big difference, and having Micah Parsons.
Of course he does, but that's the whole thing. Any coach that we're bringing in, we're going to have to find them a quarterback. I mean, I like Shedeur Sanders, but he had zero impact on this coaching search.
Once you get past Mike McCarthy versus the field, then it becomes Mike McCarthy versus the guy he's replacing. So raise the floor doesn't really go that far with me because we already had a floor that was pretty good.
You talked to Jimmy Haslam about that, dude.
Oh,
hey, Kevin Stefanski, he's out of the equation. There's no more Kevin Stefanski this or that because he's gone and he's not coming back. And that is the sad reality of the situation.
Yeah, it's just that's where I just cannot get on board with Mike McCarthy, and I would just and if I'm Jimmy Haslam and I've made this incredibly reckless decision, then my answer is going to be I'm going to try to find the mystery box because I'm going to try to find the guy. If I can't get the superstar sort of name in John Harbaugh, I'm going to get in the mystery box because what I'm trying to find is realistically the next Kevin Stefanski, but really what they want is the next Sean McVay.
Yeah, which I'm cool with, and I'm cool going the coordinator route. I need to address something in the chat though. No, Chris, I don't want a liar. Okay, but this organization has made decisions with their roster and the coaching staff that at times I've had to kind of change my.
Oh man, did he die mid defense? Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, he wants a liar. You heard it from him first. Mike McCarthy, liar. And that's the problem is like he put it out there right for everybody else. And like even when he took the job, even when Mike McCarthy took the job at Dallas, he basically admitted right away that he made all that crap up, which like, again, what are you doing? You're like throwing your credibility right out the window. But his face is awesome. But yeah, this is why I don't like Mike McCarthy. I cannot. Mike McCarthy gives your players an excuse to tune him out immediately because he's fake. He's inauthentic from that standpoint. And, that's one of the elements that matters. Shelby Harris, his exit interview thing saying that Kevin Stefanski is his favorite coach he's ever had. Part of that was talking about him being authentic. Mike McCarthy is not authentic, and just one of the many, many, many reasons I've laid out and provided the winning argument, so much so that I apparently knocked Joe into oblivion of the internet relative to it. So Mike McCarthy's a hard no for me. I'm not all that interested. John Harbaugh of the retreads is certainly the most appealing. The other retread that I think is sort of interesting to me is Vance Joseph. And when I say interested, this does not mean I'm like ready to hire these people. I don't have enough information to say I want to hire anyone, but I am interested to talk to these people. I would be interested in interviewing a guy like Vance Joseph. And the reason I'm interested in interviewing a guy like Vance Joseph is because his defense fits the Browns personnel really, really well. His scheme is outstanding. And frankly, in my opinion, it's better than Jim Schwartz's in terms of coverages. They don't have nearly, in my view, the coverage busts. I think the principles they apply in terms of playing half the man and stuff really prevent them from giving up a whole lot of big plays. Their defense is really, really impressive. They have a lot of talent, but like none of it is, I mean, don't get me wrong. Like Nick Benito and those guys are stars, but like that pass rush is just really, really impressive in the way that it attacks you, and the pressure to sack rate is outstanding. So like I could see myself being really interested in the concept of Vance Joseph comes in and does what he has done with the Denver Broncos. You're doing that in the Cleveland Browns, and the possibility of, I don't know how much validity there is to the idea, but it's been at least floated that, that if you were to hire Vance Joseph, he theoretically would be bringing Davis Webb to be the offensive coordinator. Davis Webb, the former Giants quarterback who's been the offensive coordinator you sort of have that pairing. So that's at least interesting to me. And if nothing else, I would love nothing more than to have Joseph in for an interview and have Jim Schwartz just listen and take notes. So yeah, that part of it is interesting to me. But yeah, my argument was so compelling, I knocked your internet out. But I was just talking about Vance Joseph, how he is one of the guys I would like to interview.
Yeah, I like Vance Joseph, but I don't know, man. I don't love the idea of going defense. And I like the job Vance Joseph's done in Denver, but I don't know, man. That doesn't really move the needle for me.
No, I get it. And I'll tell you, look, his scheme to me is better than Jim Schwartz's. I think he does a better job. I think his defense is more sound, more consistent. Jim Schwartz does more in terms of like the 3 and outs and stuff.
Yeah.
But the Broncos defense is just more consistent to me, especially in terms of coverage, lapses, and those type of things. And I've said before, I would love nothing more than Jim Schwartz to borrow some of his coverage principles on the back end to create more plays, to avoid more breakdowns. And, if you get Vance Joseph, it's at least been suggested and rumored that he would bring Davis Webb with him to be the offensive coordinator. Davis Webb, currently a quarterback's coach, which had played quarterback. And obviously, one of the big elements to the hire, and one of the reasons I liked having Kevin Stefanski, is because he can coach the position. Whoever you get. And the one thing I can say, in regard to your Mike McCarthy argument, he can coach the position. He can get a lot out of that position. Now, he has been gifted 3 fantastic quarterbacks in doing it, but that doesn't change the fact that when he's had them, he has gotten production out of them, and that still matters. But nevertheless, my biggest fear with replacing, Kevin Stefanski is you're going to not have that guy who's really capable of developing the position, which is the whole thing. And if you don't have that, you're screwed. Now, the other part of that, that's also the reason I really, really like John Harbaugh. There are things what I don't like about John Harbaugh, but I will give him his flowers on this. He had a Super Bowl winning quarterback in Joe Flacco, and then they bring in Lamar Jackson, and I give John Harbaugh all the credit in the world for saying, we're going to completely change our offense and cater it entirely around Lamar Jackson. We took this kid. We're developing him as this weapon. We're not going to have to do this. We're not going to do what the Falcons did with Michael Vick and try to put him in a box. We're going to build around him. We're going to cater the offense around him and develop him. And then as we go, we can sort of adjust as necessary to make the offense more dynamic. But their entire focus, which is easier said than done, is to say, we got this kid. We're going to commit the whole thing to it. And they did it. And it worked. Yep. And it was really smart. And they've made Lamar Jackson. Obviously, Lamar Jackson deserves his own credit for this, but multiple-time MVP, has been one of the most dynamic offenses in the league. And you basically said, I got this kid. How do I make him the best possible version of himself? He absolutely does that.
Well, Pete, that saved his job. He coached another 9 seasons after that because of that move. Fans wanted him out in 2018 before Lamar took over and went on that run.
Yes. Now, the part where I think the Browns were playing some games, which I approve of, the second that Todd Monken's name was mentioned as requested an interview, my immediate thought was this might be a backdoor offensive coordinator interview. They've done this before. Jim Schwartz was a backdoor coordinator interview. They interviewed him for head coach, and then ultimately hired him as a coordinator. But the second they met, the name Monken came up, I thought, are they really interested in Todd Monken as a head coach, or are we thinking about this more in terms of, well, what if what happens? Because at the time, it wasn't necessarily that Harbaugh was going to get fired. It was, are they going to make him get rid of all of his assistants?
Yeah.
And at that point, then Todd Monken is really interesting because he has a really interesting offense that has been successful. So now John Harbaugh gets fired. You've still got this interview request out there, and now you're sitting there going, was this all to me? I do not find those things to be coincidental. I think the interview with Todd Monken is entirely related to what they hope
happens
would
with
be
Harbaugh.
the John Harbaugh interest, and then that leading to something, or ultimately hiring somebody else. And then maybe Todd Monken was going to be the offensive coordinator if not for that. And obviously he'd have to have been fired. But now that John Harbaugh is out, they're both out, that could happen. And just based on the reporting that has come out that John Harbaugh, one of the sticking points and why he's no longer the head coach of the Baltimore Ravens, he would not fire Todd Monken.
Yep.
Well, it's really interesting that the Browns certainly looked open to the possibility of just bring them both in and we'll be just fine with that. So that was my read on the situation with Harbaugh and Monken. Everything I've heard about Monken suggests not a head coach, but he's been a hell of a coordinator. Obviously led Georgia offense to back-to-back national championships, has done a really, really good job with the Ravens. Has gotten, in my mind, very similar to Kevin Stefanski in this regard. When he's had dudes, those dudes produce. So like, Rashad Bateman, who I loved coming out of college, loved him in Minnesota, has been inconsistent or otherwise injured or unproductive there. But he's gotten a ton out of, obviously, Derrick Henry. He's gotten a ton out of Zay Flowers. He's gotten plenty out of Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely. Weirdly enough, the Browns have a guy who when he was coming out of college, I was thinking, man, this is an Isaiah Likely type player, except Harold Fannin blew my expectations away and had a better year than Isaiah Likely's ever had. So there are some weird elements to that, but I do think there's some similarities in that Todd Monken knows how to get production out of guys that can play. And that part of it is very intriguing to me. And, if we go even deeper down the rabbit hole and you say, oh, there's a world where John Harbaugh is somehow interested in this job. And then you sit there and you go, hey, Malik Willis, guess what type of offense we can run? Yeah. And he goes, hey, I've seen Lamar Jackson. He was an MVP twice. Maybe this sounds real good to me. And maybe there's a world where that happens. And that's where you can sort of try to sell this thing. You build the offensive line up around this thing, run the football and all these other elements. That's at least, I will say, interesting and potentially coercive in terms of a vision of this thing. Is any of that going to happen? I don't know. But like,
that's fun to talk about, man.
You can at least sort of be like, I can see where this could happen.
Yeah, I got to tell you, that'd be a pretty sweet scenario. Monken as OC, Harbaugh as the coach, Schwartz in the defense stays in place. I like Malik Willis, man. I'm interested to see what he's going to get on the market because you got guys like Dan Orlovsky saying it's going to be 40 or 50 a year. I don't think he's there.
No. I did not take it that way. I assumed when he said that he meant a total deal. No, I thought that was just guaranteed money.
Oh, okay. I could see that.
Like I could see him get 3 years. I could see him get 3 years, and 40 to 50 million of that is guaranteed.
I could see that, like a 3 year, 3 years, 95 million.
I know there are other people who said the same thing you did, and my immediate impression was either he was talking total money. I think he will get more than that in his total value of the contract.
Yeah,
but I think the guaranteed money is going to be right. I think he's in the right neighborhood in terms of guaranteed dollars. Because he's certainly going to be ahead of Justin Fields, who got a weird amount of guaranteed money for his 2-year deal. Mm-hmm. And that's put him kind of right in the Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold neighborhood.
Well, isn't that a little light on the resume to get a deal like that for a backup? I mean, Baker put in a whole season at Tampa, took him to the playoffs. Darnold won 14 games last year.
Well, here's the thing. If the vision I laid out were to come to pass and you were able to get John Harbaugh and Todd Monken hired, would you then try to lowball him, or would you be like, I'm going to make damn sure you're my quarterback?
Well, no, of course. And look, it's Jimmy. He'll fully guarantee the damn thing if he has to.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, I understand the reservation, but I'm just looking at the quarterback market.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how many answers are there. So I could see where
I get that completely.
So I think it's a situation where if you're the Browns,
2 guys yet, they still need to declare.
Yes, but it's just, to me, it looks like a situation where you're the Browns, you're like, or whoever, but certainly the Browns, given their quarterback circumstance, and you're like, we need him badly, and we're going to make sure we get him. Now, we'll see, because ultimately there's also a part of me that thinks the Browns are going to be very, very, very interested in the 2027 class. So
Yeah.
how does that work out? But like plans change if you get the dream head coach.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and and who we pick as the head coach is going to be such a not a big indicator, but it's going to start showing like the direction that we might go with this. But I feel like if they don't make a move at quarterback, it's going to feel like a lost season. Like, and I think I've said this for weeks. I think there's a world where it's Shedeur, Dylan, and Deshaun, and then maybe a veteran of the head coach's choosing. Like I see that, and I don't know how good that veteran is going to ultimately be. Is my problem.
Where we got to roll a year of Tyler Huntley quarterback.
It's real. It's real, Pete. Monken and Harbaugh were ready to draft Shedeur.
Laughs at that because I think
you're good to go.
I think Kevin Stefanski would be just a little bit jealous because he just loves Tyler Huntley so much. So yeah, I mean it's just so tough, and now the Deshaun Watson conversation is going to be more of a reality without Kevin Stefanski here. But as I talked about last week, I think he's got to totally reinvent himself as a quarterback, and I don't think he can do it. So I don't think it matters. But we're going to see initially. But yeah, whoever this is the other part with like when you fire Stefanski, you have now made it very clear that you have to do something at quarterback. You cannot just roll with these three.
All right. Well, let's go over some of these, not under the radar because we've been talking about these guys for a while, but there's a few names I want to throw by you, just get your overall impression. And, and this is obviously to you, but to the chat and to everybody listening, trying to project these head coaches and these GMs are next to impossible. Like the only thing that we're really basing this off of is whatever success their team had when they were at the helm and how they sound in interviews. I mean, the interview process, there's so many layers of this stuff. So it's really just kind of shooting from the hip. But either way, so we talked about Jesse Minter a little bit. I'm interested in Chris Shula from the Rams.
Yep.
That's a really intriguing defense for me. They went super young a couple years ago and didn't miss a beat. They lost Aaron Donald, still had a really tough unit. I'm intrigued with him. And he's got like a funny story with McVay.
He's he's got the birthmark. He's from, well, I mean, he's not born here, but he did spend time in Ohio, which is all that anyone else needs because he went to John Carroll. He's interesting. Obviously, he's been there with the Rams for a while. He basically grew up there. He was the DC at John Carroll. That's notable. So he at least knows what the address is. He is another guy I would like to talk to for all the reasons that you would think. I'd be very curious to know how much of what he's doing with the Rams defense is what he wants to do with the Rams defense, and how much of the Rams defense is what he does because that's what he has.
Yeah.
Because he hasn't been spoiled with great corners, for example. He is, he took the dude from the Washington Commanders off the heap and has made him into a really good player. Forbes. I think Carnell Lake was a undrafted free agent or some late round pick. They just signed him to extension as this very important nickel. That also raises its own questions. Like, are they planning on him staying there? Like, is he committed to staying there? But basically, it boils down to, hey, the Browns are interested in you. What do you want to do with what would you love to be able to do with Tyson Campbell and Denzel Ward? That stuff is really interesting to me because this is the thing where like you get into these interviews and his defense may be based on, well, this is what I had, so this is what I did with it, as opposed to, hey man, I've got these guys. I'd really love to be able to do this.
Yeah.
And I don't know the answer to that, but he is a guy who's played a whole lot more zone. Again, I think a lot of that is out of necessity, but he may just like doing that. But yes, he's done a heck of a job. He's got a lot out of a little, which I'm always a big fan of, especially on that side of the ball, because you'd like to be able to invest more of your money on the other side of the ball. So yeah, he's certainly a guy I'd be intrigued by. He fits the age element. The only thing, I like the fact that he has coached, I wish he coached a little bit more in terms of positions.
Yeah.
Maybe he's done more of that, than I know of, but he's largely been linebackers coach, which doesn't mean he can't be a defensive coordinator by any stretch. There's lots of guys who can. I'd love to know just how much more he knows relative to the rest of the defense. Obviously, he's the defensive coordinator, so you'd like to assume he knows more than that. But like, is he a guy that really knows defensive line, really knows DBs, or has he been really benefited by who he's had? Because if and when he were to get the head coaching job, has he just been surrounded with really good cast that has been really helpful, or can he do it? Now, the interesting part from the Rams standpoint is the Rams will just watch Chris Shula walk out the door and probably just re-sign and rehire Raheem Morris, and then eventually, in like 2 more years, let him get hired by
they'll rehire Chris Shula.
Get 2 more third-round picks and get the cycle going again. They'll try to get Fontenot to get another GM job somewhere to hire him as a head coach again, and they will continue to grift the NFL for third-round picks. But yeah, Shula's definitely on a list of guys I'd be interested in, and I don't know if his connection to Ohio means anything.
Yeah.
When it comes to head coaching talent, I hope it skipped a generation because his grandfather was obviously quite good at it. Dad's not so much.
All right, so it was brought up in the chat, and I'm here for it, Pete. I like the entertainment value of John Gruden. Talk me out of it.
Well, he's a bigot. Let's start there.
It's fair. That's fair.
I mean, John Gruden.
Do we have to go?
The first press conference. Hey, John, what about those emails? You want to talk about those?
That was a long time ago. I don't know. I'm a different person now. Done.
Well, he may be. You know who doesn't think he's a different person?
Move on.
You know who doesn't think he's a different person? Do you see which quarterbacks work with him on his new venture? Do you see what the amount of melanin in those quarterbacks is on that venture he's doing? Not a lot of it.
Yeah,
not a lot of it.
I got you.
There's no getting away from the fact that John Gruden is not a meaningful coach because of what he did. It is a non-starter to me anyway. I would pray it's a non-starter for Jimmy Haslam as well.
Yeah,
you cannot have that opening press conference. You just cannot. Where you have to sit there and explain. Hey,
are you telling me that Jimmy Haslam, who gave the largest deal in NFL history to Deshaun Watson, is going to be scared off by some emails?
Well,
if there's one franchise who gives 0 Fs,
I'll tell you who's not going to. Let's put it this way. I'll tell you who's not going to put him on the coaching search list. Andrew Berry.
Yeah, you're probably right there.
Like, right. It's just one of those things. Like, you just can't do it. You just cannot do it. And look, even if they hired him, he has to, the locker room dynamic is immediately gone because there's going to be some number of players who are like, I'm not doing this. It cannot be done. And he hasn't coached it forever. We are in. I know he's coaching an all-star game. I know he's coaching a hula ball right now, but we are well into Bill Cowher territory in terms of coaching, how long he's been since he's coached.
Well, Pete, in fairness, he's had the same length of slump that Deshaun has had. Neither has been any good since 2018. So it can come together perfectly. All right. I want to talk about.
Look, I'll be honest. If I was to call it Gruden, it'd be his brother. I'd call John. Or Jay Gruden. I call Jay Gruden.
Yeah, I like Jay. I always like Jay. I didn't think he was.
No, I don't think he's the answer either. But if you're honestly, seriously going, I want a Gruden, call Jay. Jay has not done what John did, and I think he's done a really good job in terms of his content stuff in the various places he's done it. But if you're going to call a Gruden, call Jay. Do not call John Gruden. That's just.
What do you think about the kid from Jacksonville, Grant Yadinsky? He's he's either 29 or 30, but he's apparently rising like a meteor in coaching circles. And apparently, so he came from Minnesota last year. Okay. Yeah. And the word is when they hired him that he floored everybody in the room and they just had to do it. And then you look at the leap that Trevor Lawrence has begrudgingly made this year, that son of a hussy. You have to be intrigued by him. I think it's early. I definitely think it's early. But if we were going to take a chance on a coordinator, I don't mind pairing that kid with Jim Schwartz.
Yeah, I mean, one, my immediate reaction is if you're willing to go with that, why aren't you just going to go with Tommy Rees at that point? Because you have him, and again, you could potentially keep the staff in place. I'm not saying you have to, because obviously when you get into that and you're talking about a guy who's basically 30, that's right in the Tommy Rees zone. He's certainly interesting. Obviously, again, he's a guy who's at least worked with quarterbacks at some point. You take what you will with what he's done with Jacksonville, which has been pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the Browns are familiar with Minnesota. They have connections there. They can easily reach out and find out what Kwesi thought of him and all that stuff. The biggest question you're going to have, and again, I don't know him. Maybe he's got some commanding presence. He's a great leader, but at that age, is he ready to be the guy? Is he ready to be a leader of men, or are you just hiring a guy who's really good at scheme and hoping it works? And I don't know the answer to that. And there's a couple guys that fall into this bucket that are hotshot coordinator types. That's going to be the big question. It's not, do they know the game? It's, can they communicate? Can they own the locker room? Can they command respect? All that stuff. And I have no idea, but I have no these are the things where I have no problem interviewing a guy like that, but I'd be very curious to know. And if they don't, that may be the answer, that he's just not there yet.
Yeah. Well, and another one is Clint Kubiak from Seattle.
Yes.
We know the last name, but he's very young, and that would be a similar problem to me.
Yes. And the people who sent me messages about him all say his press conferences are like, he's less for people who, like, all these people are like, man, I love Clint Kubiak. And then you go, well, how'd you feel about Kevin Stefanski? I don't like him. Clint Kubiak is apparently more passive and softer spoken than Kevin Stefanski ever was. So it's the same deal. Those are guys like that. Mike LaFleur, the other LaFleur, is he a guy that's ready to sort of make that leap? There's a whole bunch of them. So it's really just coming up with, there's a lot of smart guys, but the guy you don't want to end up with is you don't want to end up with Mike McDaniel, who is a genuinely brilliant offensive mind, but has no control of the locker room, as we've seen. He in year 4, he made this big speech about, this year we're going to be about accountability. And then week 1, Bradley Chubb comes out and goes, we did whatever we wanted on defense. We just made it up. And then Tua throws the entire team under the bus. Like, again, to go back to Kevin Stefanski, well, I don't like Kevin Stefanski. He didn't hold guys accountable. Well, you have not seen anything yet until you get to Mike McDaniel. It's just a different deal. So I think he's a brilliant guy. That's why everybody was sitting there going, man, I hope Mike McDaniel gets fired so he can be offensive coordinator. Hey, I get that. But that's the difference. Like, whether it's Udinsky, if it's LaFleur, if it's Kubiak, are they the guys where you hire them and you go, man, this guy's a great coordinator who's not a head coach? And there are people who think Kevin Stefanski's that, which I vehemently disagree with, but that is a thing that comes up. So it's a question of who's ready to be a leader and who's just an offensive genius, who you're going, man, I want the offensive genius to be in charge of my football team.
Yeah. And, like, you never know. Yeah. Well, and you never know how these guys are going to handle themselves in these roles. I would have told you, Pete, a year ago that Liam Cohen is probably not going to work. Baker had just gotten, what's his name from Carolina, the head coaching job the year before. Good quarterbacks do that, man. Baker's a good quarterback. He makes coaches look good. I would have said that about Liam Cohen. He had that goofy press conference, the Duval thing, all that. That dude has been fantastic. Really, really good. And it's a perfect example of just like never knowing where these guys are going to come from. We've seen a ton of coordinators have success in good situations and then move on and just like they can't do it, they're not the guy. And it started a little rocky in Jacksonville. It didn't start great. Like, they won games, they got lucky, but that offense was a slow start, man. But they hit their stride, and sweet Jesus, I hope this week.
No, the guy I'm trying to think of it. That's who it is. The guy that kept getting head coaching jobs and just was never a head coach was Norv Turner.
Oh,
Turner forever was a great offensive coordinator. He kept getting opportunity after opportunity, just was never that guy. Josh McDaniels is the absolute pinnacle of great offensive mind, good offensive coordinator, cannot be a head coach.
Nope.
So that's the trick. And like, you know, you may be willing to roll the dice on that because when you get it right, man, you are in a great spot. Like, I don't think it's unfair to say that one of the all-time advantages going right now in the NFL is having a great offensive play caller as a head coach. It's a huge advantage for what it does for your football team. Man, such a good point. I killed Joe.
If offensive coordinator is worth his salt, he's going to be a head coach next year. Like, and then you're trying to figure things out on offense all over again. You know, it's almost like if you have an established quarterback, it's almost smarter to go with a defensive guy and figure out that side of the ball and go. But if you need to develop somebody, I have such a hard time thinking that, well, yeah, if the coordinator, you know, coaches this kid up and he has a great first couple of years, coordinator's gone. He's a head coach.
Oh, you dirty. The Raiders are doing the thing. The Raiders are trying to interview Davis Webb for head coach. I'm wondering if they're trying to pull that trick.
They might be.
But yeah, no, like that's the problem is like Clint Kubiak, all these people, man, I want Clint Kubiak. And then, you know, but there's a whole bunch of these guys in this. So I'm curious if the Browns can find that guy because that'd be great. And look, to me, I thought Kevin Stefanski could be that guy. Mm-hmm. But if you can get Sean McVay, you are absolutely killing it right now in terms of what you can do in the league. And Mike McDaniel, look, when he had it going, he was really, really good. So, I mean, that's Kyle Shanahan has been outstanding. Kyle Shanahan is a struggle in terms of like relating to players and stuff. And maybe he's gotten better at it, but he's been a nightmare in terms of some of that stuff, but he's so good at some of the other things that it just makes up for it. He's just got such an overwhelming advantage.
Yeah, agreed. And, you know, it's if they do something on the offensive side of the ball with their next head coach, I mean, we've heard the names. You got Brian Daboll's out there. Kingsbury's out there.
Nope. Yeah,
Joe Brady is another one. What was that?
I want no part of Brian Daboll. I want no part of Cliff Kingsbury.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I got a little bit of intrigue with Kingsbury because I thought they were so much fun last year. If he's just well, actually no, because we'd be interviewing for head coach. Yeah,
no, he got fired.
Really, what's that?
He could be an offensive coordinator. He got fired.
Yeah. You're right. But I have no interest in his offense. It wouldn't be as an offensive coordinator.
No,
I feel like as a coordinator,
his offense is crap to me. Yeah. I imagine you did. Did you watch the Commanders on Prime Vision when you get the benefit of being able to see the all 22 like live and from behind?
No, I didn't watch that.
You know, you hear about this and you read this and all this stuff about his outside receivers never change sides. Watch it in a live action. You're just like, what is this? This is horrible. You're watching their best receiver. I know he's going to be every single play. This is ridiculous. Like, who does this? And it's him because of the weird, like, I see huge value in what you can do with tempo, but being so predictable like that is so stupid. Like, I cannot stand it. I don't know why anyone takes him seriously. It was a running joke with Arizona for years until he got fired. He obviously had a great year. Credit to him on that with Daniels the first year. But this year it was a disaster again. And like once teams get a beat on him, it sucks. So like part of me is hoping he goes to Baltimore because I think it's gonna be a train wreck.
Yeah. Well, okay. So just a little pushback on that. I feel like, you know how I feel about Kyler Murray. I feel like Kyler Murray is an anchor to any offensive system. He's going to play hero ball, and that's all he can do. He can't do anything on schedule. So I have a hard time giving Kingsbury too hard a time for failing with Kyler Murray. Okay,
yeah, Patrick Mahomes at Texas Tech.
What's that?
Yeah, Patrick Mahomes at Texas Tech.
And they scored 80 points a game, Pete.
No, they did not. No, they did not. Not with him.
Okay. Patrick Mahomes threw for 700 yards and 7 touchdowns in a game that he lost. Okay.
Yeah, I watched that game. One game against Baker.
Yeah, okay. That's greatest game ever.
He went. What was his record that year? Like 5-6.
No, he won like 7 games. I think he was. I think he was 7-5.
Terrible.
Like
that was Cliff Kingsbury.
Yeah, yeah, but nobody wanted Texas Tech. Until this year. Like, what's the last time Texas Tech was relevant?
Patrick Mahomes.
And look, and not for nothing, he had 1 year with a healthy Jaden Daniels, and they were incredible.
They went to the AFC Baker Mayfield
with a rookie quarterback.
He had Baker Mayfield and didn't want him.
I mean, so did Kevin Stefanski, Pete. You're gonna bury people about that?
He won that. He walked down at Oklahoma and won the Heisman Trophy.
Yeah, you're not wrong. But he was a walk-on though. And not just that. When he was at Texas Tech,
he's a walk-on because the guy who offered him a scholarship told him to kick rocks.
Look, when Baker went to Oklahoma, he rebuilt his body. He was a skinny kid at Texas Tech. He straight up did, dude. He was skinny. And he got hurt after 5 games. And they're like, look, you're a walk-on. You're 6 foot, 185 pounds. We're gonna bring in Davis. No, it was Pat Mahomes. They brought in Mahomes.
No, not yet. It was
the year after. And him and but he only played.
I think it was Davis Webb. I think it may have been Davis Webb.
There you go.
This is not Joe Burrow being like behind Dwayne Haskins, who threw 50 touchdowns and transferring to LSU. No. Cliff Kingsbury cut Baker Mayfield, who went on to win the Heisman Trophy. That's
not fair. He was hurt. He was hurt.
Cut him. All
right. Well, that's we can agree to disagree.
I am not.
I certainly don't love Kingsbury, but I'm not. I'm not willing to say that he's bottom of the barrel.
His offense being that stale and predictable just drives me insane. Because if you're not cooking, and you're just like consistently going 3 and out, or you're just struggling for like a couple series or whatever, you're going to just see this over and over where the receivers are walking over the line of scrimmage, the same side every time. And you're just like, what is this? Am I playing Tecmo Super Bowl? Because that's what it reminds me of.
What, you want more than 6 options, Pete? That's not reasonable. Okay. That's just not reasonable.
Terrible.
All right. How about you? You got anybody? Okay. Give me 3 absolutely nots. Okay. For a head coach out of like the guys that people talk about and that you're hearing on the radio and on X and in the chat here. Give me 3 absolutely nots that are pretty popular candidates.
I don't who is popular. I honestly have not been paying all that much attention. Oh, I know who's an absolutely not. Marcus Freeman, because I don't know who the hell thought he was coming to the Cleveland Browns. They put him on the list. That's an absolutely not. No, I don't know who's out there that you're sort of like think is popular relative to the Browns. Like the one that
Brian Flores.
Well, he's absolutely not.
Mike McCarthy, Jonathan Gannon.
Oh, that's an absolutely not because he's 15 and 36.
Yeah, that's a
you don't get to, you don't know. You do not get an interview at 15 and 36, let alone the job.
That's what floored me about Mary Kay coming out with that like immediately. Like that was knew his name and knew where he was from. That's it. Yeah. He went to St. Ignatius. Must be good. No. 15 and 36. He might be a hell of a coordinator. How about a guy like Robert Saleh, who was a finalist last time around? Okay, I like Robert Saleh quite a bit. Yeah. But well, I'll start. I really like Robert Saleh. I like the way he communicates. I like the way he leads and all this other stuff. He was an absolute fool to take the Jets job. Yeah. And unfortunately, that has sort of hurt him quite a bit. Oh, yeah. His high watermark is 7 wins. That's really tough to sort of shake off. I would be interested in interviewing him, absolutely. But I don't think, one, he would want the job at this point because I think he's looking at this and going, I'm gonna get maybe one shot at this. I've got to be absolutely sure. And I don't know how a guy like that can look at this job and go, I am absolutely sure that I'm going to bet on Jimmy Haslam after working with the Jets and being like, this is it again. And it's a similar situation with the Jets. He could get the defense going, had no offense. So it's troubling. Now, having said that, he had he had an interesting offense court. He had Matt LaFleur as his offense coordinator. Like they had a pretty good setup with the Jets, and it just did not work. And they fired LaFleur after the first year. 2 seasons. Was it 2 seasons? I thought
I was 21 and 22, I think.
Okay, I thought it was after the first year because I remember championing that hire because I like Salah and I love anybody from the
Yeah.
Shanahan tree. But yeah, but
So
I like
I like him as a coach quite a bit. I was really, really a fan of him. I didn't necessarily think the Browns were necessarily the right hire for him, but I just like the way he carries himself. I like the way he operates. I like him as a communicator. He gives a great press conference, all that crap.
yeah.
But again, and this is the problem, and like you're going to replace Kevin Stefanski, and your answer is, well, a guy who won most his high watermark is 7 wins. Like that's tough.
Yeah. Yeah, and not for nothing, but his specialty is the only side of the ball that you're okay on.
Yeah. Now,
Yeah.
having said that, could he have a lot of fun with this defense? Yes, he could.
Oh, hell yeah. And I love the system that he runs. I love how aggressive they are. I love whether it was New York or San Francisco, dudes play like their hair is on fire for Robert Saleh. It's fun to watch. And his energy is fantastic. I know fans would eat that up before, they ultimately turned on him because of some stupid thing. But
so I think he's going to be Ben Johnson at this point, where he's going to be like, he's going to dabble his name out there, but he's already said, like, I'm not taking until I find
any
the right
job.
fit. In Arizona, is interviewing. I don't know if he's really interested in that job or if that's sort of just to keep his name in the cycle and then stay at San Francisco another year or whatever. I think he's going to be patient. I think he should be patient and find the right job for him because I think he can be a good coach. I just think he's got to pick the right situation.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I do like Saleh. Here's an interesting name. How about Antonio Pierce?
Nope, that's an absolutely not. Clown.
Yeah.
Clown in my view.
Okay, elaborate.
Well, let's not even let's excuse the Raiders part for a minute. Mm-hmm. What happened at Arizona State?
You're gonna have to remind me that. I don't remember this one.
He was part of the who was it? The dude who the old another Jets Herm Edwards.
Yeah.
And they had a racket going at Arizona State where they got all kinds of trouble for recruiting and all this other mess. And part of the reason Antonio Pierce ended up in the NFL is because he wasn't allowed to coach in college for a little while.
Then, I didn't hear that. I knew about Herm. I didn't know about Pierce.
Yeah, he was part of that. I think he was like a driving force because Herm Edwards was too lazy to do any work.
I feel like that aligns perfectly with Jimmy's way of operating in business.
Then he goes to the Raiders and just always felt unserious to me. His team was never anything remotely interesting. Yeah. I think the Giants are interviewing because it accounts for the rule, and he was a former player.
Yeah.
I don't even think he's good at TV. Like, I think he's genuinely terrible. I don't know what the Raiders were doing like if they were going to hire an interim guy, they should have hired Bisaccia, and they didn't, and they went with him. It was awful. It was awful, and the players, I think, at the end revolted.
Yeah. Okay. How about Lou Anarumo?
Well, the funniest part about Lou Anarumo is I remember when his name was coming up for for jobs as a potential head coaching candidate, and like they had bullet points. I think the last one was like lives in Jersey. It was like what?
That was one of his strengths.
It was like little bullet points. I think he's a tremendous defensive coach.
Yeah,
I don't think he's a head coach. And obviously I think he did a great job early in the year with the Indianapolis Colts, and maybe injuries were the whole thing. They get Sauce Gardner, and he basically never gets him. DeForest Buckner gets hurt. They have a whole bunch of other issues, but like the defense fell apart at the end of the year. He's also on the older side. I've seen him getting a few interviews. I still think it was a mistake that the Bengals fired him as their DC, but I don't sit there and go, man, I want as a head coach.
I get that. Makes sense. Let's see who we got on this little list here. I mean, it's we've been through just about all these names. There's
I give you names that I like.
What's that?
I'm interested in.
Well, yeah, fire away with those.
Okay, guys, I'm interested in. Frank Ross, special teams coach, Houston Texans. I would love to talk to Frank Ross. He has been great for the special teams unit for Houston. They've been top of the line for the last couple of years. He is has the bumper sticker, played from Canfield, or played at Canfield High School, played at John Carroll, where he's a Hall of Famer. At John Carroll, he was the quarterbacks coach for a year, coached running backs for a year, and then has done special teams. He's also got experience on the scouting side with the Colts and with the New England Patriots, wrapped around his experience as special teams coach. So I don't know if he's a head coach or not, but I like the fact that he has a varied experience element where he's been in all these different fields, because if he is a head coach, I think that's valuable. And the fact that even though he's predominantly a special teams coach, I like the fact that he has at least coached positions in football and has coached quarterbacks. So at least he knows what one looks like. I think that matters. So
that absolutely
he's a guy I would be very interested in talking to. In that vein, I think he's not quite 40 yet, but he's got a little bit of credibility. He's played, even if, D3 college, I don't care. Like he played all that stuff. If you're into that, that's not a deal breaker for me, but he does have that box checked for people who are interested in it. So I'd be very interested to talk to a guy like that. I would be very interested to talk to, I already mentioned Vance Joseph. You already covered Chris Shula. I'd be interested to talk to Thomas Brown, the Patriots tight ends coach / passing game coordinator. He did well as the interim head coach for the Bears after they fired Eberflus. There's a sense that he's a leader of men. I don't know if this is true or not. That's just what I've heard. He has 2 stints as a coordinator, even though most people who see him as a coordinator don't like him as a coordinator. So he's been around in terms of a variety of roles in that standpoint. And obviously, even though he did pretty well as the interim head coach with the Bears, they knew they wanted Ben Johnson. So obviously that wasn't going to happen. So I'd be interested to at least talk to him along those lines. I'd be interested to talk to Matt LaFleur is in the bucket of guys I'd like to talk to.
Mike LaFleur.
Or Mike LaFleur. Well, I'm keeping an eye on
obviously Matt would be wonderful, but Mike is the one who we can talk to.
But yes, that's another one. And again, I don't know if he's that guy, but if he's that, if there's a guy in that bucket that can be that guy that they think is that Kyle Shanahan / Sean McVay, then I'm all about those guys. So those are guys that I think are interesting at that standpoint, and they are not the traditional offensive defensive coordinator or former head coach. These are guys who, Thomas Brown has been, and Brown played for the Browns. That's another one. But
who, Thomas Brown did?
Yes.
I didn't know he played for the Browns. I remember him at Georgia. I didn't think he played for the Browns, though.
A mutual acquaintance sent me the roster transaction where they put David Bakune on IR and then activated him.
Our mutual acquaintance has a very similar coaching list as you.
Well, he's probably just sending you with
probably from you, but still.
Yeah. But those aren't the stereotypical things that you sort of get there. And the other guy that stands out to me that I'm curious to see if the Browns talk to is David Shaw.
From the old Stanford coach.
Well, and he's currently in Detroit.
Yeah.
As a sort of I think he's passing game coordinator. Really, he's just a consultant.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I'm necessarily all that like gung ho to hire him. I'd just be interested to talk to him. And that's another that obviously, again, not the obvious, but those are guys that I think are more interesting to talk to. And I'll be honest, like the guy that they announced that they're interviewing
from Seattle.
Is it Aiden Dundee or Dirty?
Dirk maybe.
I'll find it real quick. It is Aiden Dirty, I guess. It Dirty or Dirty, I don't know how it's pronounced. He's British, which is really interesting, and I've looked it up. He has the accent, but he is. This is part of the reason I'd be very curious. I'll be very curious to see if the Browns want to interview Ross, because Dirty. I'll say Aiden because I'm tired of this. I don't want to say it like that anymore. It'd be wrong and assume this guy's name is Dirty. The Seattle Seahawks defensive coordinator has experience as both a coach and then has been experienced on the scouting side. I also appreciate the fact that his path to the NFL is very similar to Catherine Hickman. He played in England before he got a couple stops on the practice squad in the NFL as a middle linebacker, and then has worked over in England, and then just like Hickman did in Canada before ultimately starting to matriculate and get experience in the NFL, and then work their way up from there. I'm very intrigued by that guy, in part because, one, Mike McDonald's scheme is awesome.
Yeah.
They are outstanding. And if he's that good, I'd be happy to steal from that. Now, is he ready to be a head coach? I don't know. Again, this is another one of those. Some of these guys I would love to interview just to, if I'm the Browns or anyone else, or just me, just to ask them about their scheme. Just, the stuff you're doing defensively. But I am a big fan. If you can find the right guy in terms of the leadership qualities and all those stuff, I really like the idea of getting guys with varied backgrounds that have had a little bit of time in these very things, because I do think then as the head man, that experience is valuable, even if it's like, hey man, I know what it's like to be a scout, so I can say, hey, I want you to look for this when it comes to what we're talking about, or like when they get into draft meetings, be able to have a sense of where they're coming from, I think is valuable. The fact that, they worked with various positions and stuff, I think is useful. I think all that stuff carries over. Not that you necessarily need that guy to go, run drills for a particular position, but I'd like to have a guy who at least knows what he's looking at when he's doing it. So when he's hiring assistants, he has the right guy. Now that's going to be the question with this guy. I think is what kind of network does he have in terms of assistants, which is obviously that's critical for anybody.
Yeah, I was just going to say. I mean, especially if we're hiring somebody on the defensive side of the ball, they have to have a plan of attack for the offense.
So, I mean, that part of it's interesting. That's obviously one of the questions you have is like, what could you pull together in terms of a staff? It's obviously a big deal. So, the Monken one, obviously, I felt like I saw through it right away. But this one, I actually am very intrigued with it. Doesn't mean I'm necessarily saying, "Oh man, go hire this guy." Yeah. But that's my whole thing. Like as you sort of alluded to, I don't have nearly any information to be like, hire this man. Of course. And every time we go through this, everybody gets very on basically no information and goes, you have to hire this guy. And that's how there was fanfare for Hugh Jackson. There's fanfare for Chip Kelly. There's fanfare for Josh McDaniels, and none of them could be head coaches in the NFL. Like you just don't have the information. So to get that super passionate. So I'm more interested in terms of who can I talk to that I'm really just interested in getting to know about. And maybe they find out that this guy's a really good head coach. The same way that I cannot deal with the people who are like, the talk of, which doesn't seem to be happening, but the sense that Andrew Berry might get promoted to president. And then they were either going to promote Glenn Cook or Catherine Hickman to GM. And like the people are like, Catherine Hickman, like what? Like immediately just cannot deal with the idea of this woman being in charge as a GM, even though all accounts are she's like fantastic at what she does at her job. And, I can't prove it necessarily, but I look at her arriving in 2023 and things they've done since 2023 and how really efficient and streamlined some of those processes we got, not the least of which was this past offseason. Do I give her all the credit for that? Of course not, but I think she had a significant role in helping the team from that standpoint. So like, I don't get caught up in this. In the same way that there's a part of me that goes, man, I hope they hire this dude from the Seattle Seahawks, because people will lose their damn minds if the head coach has a British accent.
British accent. First of all, Pete, I'm just going to let you know right now about Catherine Hickman. If she's our GM and the Browns are the first team with a female GM, all that is going to do is become the lowest hanging fruit for the worst parts of the internet to just tear us apart at every turn. Okay. We already get made fun of enough. All right. And our GM can't be a woman while Deshaun Watson is on the roster. Okay. That can't happen unless you want her to ultimately cut him to kind of do a full circle moment.
Not cut him. I want her to load him into the cannon that fires him out of Cleveland, or gets to pull the trigger, light the match, whatever. Yeah, I'm here for all that. Yeah, I love it. I'm glad. Oh, somebody in the chat's telling me it is dirty.
Yeah,
Great. So even better, dirty Captain British. Let's do it. So yeah, I mean, I don't get caught up in that stuff because I just want the right guy, and obviously he's passed away since, but like Mike Leach was a lawyer, but he's a really good coach.
I mean, look, John Harbaugh was a special teams coordinator.
But I mean, like he was at least in the game. But yes, that was obviously there were people at the time who were saying, "What? How could you possibly hire a special teams coach?
Yeah,
it's not the traditional route." But obviously when the Browns had Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, he was a former commodities trader. I don't care about that stuff. I just want the right people, and I do think that the people that come from different backgrounds actually might bring something to the table that's actually valuable from that standpoint. So yeah. I think that's interesting. Now, the part I do want to address with the John Harbaugh thing, there are weaknesses with John Harbaugh. There are a lot of strengths. I laid out some of them with I love what he did with Lamar Jackson and turning that offense over to him. He also has a reputation of he is not a hard ass.
No.
He is a guy that, at least with the Ravens, and I don't know how much of this is recent or has always been the case, but he has a certain set of rules for some guys and a different set of rules for other guys. He's got sort of a Jimmy Johnson-like mindset in terms of that. Now, is that wrong? Not necessarily, but it can lead to some issues, and it has led to some issues. Obviously, I don't think the Zach Orr hire on defense was good this year. I don't think that was a good play. I don't think they should have let the dude that ended up in Tennessee go in place of him. And whether it's him, Todd Monken, or whoever, I don't think it's an unfair criticism to point out how many times that seems like they completely forgot they had Derrick Henry on the football team in the second half of football games.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, he's certainly not infallible, but he's good. There's no getting
it. But to your point, Pete, I mean, Baltimore has been calling for his head for the last couple of years.
Yes,
it's like one man's trash is another man's treasure, and our standards are so low that we look at a guy like Harbaugh, who through a certain perspective has been disappointing for the last however many number of years and hasn't met expectations the way they were supposed to. I mean, that was a roster the last 3 years that was among the most elite in the NFL. And I mean, you had two MVP candidates last year in your backfield, and they all stayed healthy for the entire year. Not only is Lamar just an absolute witch of a playmaker and an MVP all in himself, Derrick Henry's the best closer in football.
Yep.
So I love John Harbaugh. I'll take him yesterday, let alone tomorrow. But we're not getting a guy that's going to come in and be the greatest coach in the history of history. Like he's a damn good coach, but he's not going to work miracles.
Yeah, I mean his playoff record is decidedly better with Joe Flacco than it is with Lamar Jackson. There's no getting away from that fact. Now, even though I laid out the things I just laid out, if they could finesse it, where they could get John Harbaugh and have Jim Schwartz be your defensive coordinator, and this is one of the reasons I really liked having the Kevin Stefanski element to this, is you have a guy like John Harbaugh who, if you want to call him a player's coach, you want to call Kevin Stefanski a player's coach, as I'm watching players cry their eyes out when he's fired, and then people you lost the locker room, get out of here. And Shelby Harris is like, he's my favorite coach I've ever had because he's human, which says it all. But I like the fact that if you have that guy, that you have the Jim Schwartz element to balance that out, that you have the hard ass element that's going to push particularly the defensive side of the ball and push them to the limit, because those guys are going to hopefully push the limit to the offensive side of the ball and get those guys to push harder. So that's my sort of thing with this whole thing is I really appreciate having that balance. I don't need all of my coaches, particularly in leadership positions, to have the same personality.
Yeah.
I like a little bit of balance. I like the fact that there are going to be guys who naturally matriculate to a guy like Jim Schwartz versus a guy who might matriculate more to whether it's a position coach, whether it's the head coach, or whether these other things. So you have, sort of a truer family thing as opposed to everybody has to sort of have the same personality, because it's just not realistic, particularly with the way athletes are in this day and age, particularly with the amount of money involved everybody's making in this day and age. I think that part is valuable and balanced. So like, if you could thread the needle and you could get John Harbaugh and you could keep Jim Schwartz and you could bring in Todd Monken and just do that, that's awesome. And at that point, Jimmy Haslam can call me up and or just come up and rub it in my face and saying, yeah, that's why I fired Kevin Stefanski. And at that point, I'd have to eat it. But that's a whole lot of pressure on Jimmy Haslam to deliver, and I don't know if he's got the goods for that.
Yeah, well, and to your point about Monken too, Monken's got some sass to him. Monken's kind of a surly dude. I like Monken as well. Like, I think that's a great fit with Harbaugh.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've heard some questionable stuff about him as well, just in terms of, to your point, he's exactly that.
Yeah,
and that doesn't always work with his players. So
I feel like because we had him in 2019, and
I'm amazed that the Browns even asked.
What's that?
That's why I'm like, that was the other part of my reaction when I saw a requested interview with Todd Monken, because I know how much he hated the Browns when he left.
Yeah.
Hated this team.
And well, that's the thing, though. Has he accepted the interview, or they just asked, right?
Just all we know is request.
Yeah.
Have not heard anything since then. But like, for the people who are still holding that torch out for John Dorsey, oh my God, that 2019 team was an absolute nightmare, and Todd Monken's life was horrible for a year watching that thing unfold. And like, so if he was to openly just turn down that request, I'd be like, yeah, I get it. Now, that also may not, I don't know if Detroit's going to ask either with John Dorsey sitting up there, but like, yeah, I mean, like 2019, that team was just such the people who think John Dorsey was some great GM or whatever, because he got 3 picks right in the top 36, 2 of them in the top 4. And obviously at this point, Baker Mayfield's basically a 500 quarterback.
Yeah.
The culture and the setup and everything in Berea was horrendous. And obviously Freddie Kitchens wasn't cut out, even though he's a really nice guy. Just was an absolute mess. And Todd Monken could not get out of here fast enough off that team. So that's interesting to see. That we'll see what happens with that. If that becomes a factor. And look, if there is a way where they can finagle this, obviously if John Harbaugh's coming and there's no John Dorsey, and maybe he liked Andrew Berry, I don't know. But if you get Todd Monken to come back here, that would be something.
That would be something. I mean, the only other more impressive thing is if we somehow convince Kyle Shanahan to come back.
God. Yeah, PowerPoint it up. Yeah, which is, we'll see. That's where, I just cannot get my hopes up and go, oh man, of course they're going to get John Harbaugh. Like, why would,
Yeah. The fun part of all this is that we truly don't know, right? They could do any number of options and it could work or it could fail. We really don't know. We don't know with any of these candidates, even the guys that are coming around their second time around. We don't know. They might get lucky and fall into a quarterback. It might work. It might not, so it's like we can, bang our heads against the wall, going over all these guys and what we like and what we don't like, and what we think we're looking for. But you never know what's going to work, and you never know what's truly going to be available to you. We can ask a million people for the job, but they have to accept, So it's going to be a very, very interesting offseason, interesting few weeks.
Well, that's the other part is, the Browns, thankfully, have not had to do this for a minute.
Yeah.
The way the coaching thing has gone has changed since really the last time the Browns did it. The last time the Browns did a coaching search, Dallas did what teams used to do. They rushed out and hired Mike McCarthy as fast as possible. And I remember at the time, the Browns had sort of requested an interview with him, and people were pissed the Cowboy, like the Browns, there were so many fans and media were like, the Browns blew it because they didn't rush out and go hire him.
Yeah.
That dynamic is over. Like that doesn't happen anymore. It's a much slower, more deliberate process. One, because of the rules with how playoff teams have to operate. So if you're trying to get, obviously some of these guys are done, so you could hire John Harbaugh right now.
Yeah.
Now, if he wanted to do that, or Kevin Stefanski can go get hired right now. But more and more, you know, it used to be, you know, one, you had more incentive to fire your coach during the season because you wanted to be the first one out the door to go get a new one. And thankfully, I think for the betterment of the process, the betterment of the league, that is largely gone because obviously nobody has been hired yet. And, you know, in many years past, we've already had like 2 or 3 hires.
Yeah. Yeah. It usually is a little quicker than this. I feel like last year, weren't Ben Johnson and Vrabel pretty quick? Or did those take a little bit of time?
Vrabel was faster because he was free.
Yeah.
But he did do some interviews, so I don't.
I know he interviewed with the Jets. I know he interviewed with the Jets and the Patriots.
It wasn't like, you know, Tuesday morning they hired him. I think it took a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Before he finally accepted that job. Like the whole calendar slowed down. So like, and there are a lot of people, you know, like on our forums and stuff, are sort of wired to the old way of doing things. Like, why aren't we doing anything?
Yeah.
It's a slower process. I think it's a better process. So, you know, the Harbaugh thing's going to change everything because now everybody's going to work at Harbaugh's pace.
Yeah.
Because you know, if Harbaugh were to sit there and go, I'm going to wait to see how the playoffs go, and maybe somebody fires a coach that, like, you know, the one that's sort of out there. Well, there's a couple that are out there really. Green Bay and then Buffalo are teams where we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
And if they flame out super early, there was talk of potentially maybe replacing them because there was a released report that the Green Bay Packers were potentially interested in Kevin Stefanski. But then I've also seen reports that are saying like they may just extend LaFleur, who I think is a really good coach. Buffalo's another one where there's tension between Bean and McDermott. And if they go like out immediately, I could see change happening there. And so if John Harbaugh just wants to take his time because there's a million teams interested in him,
then
or he wants to see if, you know, there's a better job that's going to open up if he's a little bit patient, like that's going to be the pace that this thing goes. John Harbaugh's going to set the pace for the entire coaching carousel at this point, unless somebody wants to go and basically say, screw this, we're going to hire Kevin Stefanski right now.
Yeah.
Get it done. And then after that, we're going to see how the other dominoes sort of fall.
I could see that. So we have, I think we agree, we've got the Ravens as the number one job available for obvious reasons. The talent, especially the talent at important positions, is pretty overwhelming. Giants or Falcons for you?
For job?
Like if you had to take over a job.
Falcons.
Okay.
Like,
and are you a Penix over Dart? Are you neither one moves the needle enough for me to not go, towards the team with 2 pass rushers and a finished offense pretty much?
Yeah, I don't have any strong love for Penix, honestly.
Yeah.
I like Dart better.
Same.
Now Dart's penchant for disaster is concerning.
Yeah.
I'm also not loving the fact that his dad seems to want to get in fights with people over the internet.
Well,
it has everything to do with the Falcons' talent overall. Their offensive line is really good. Bijan Robinson is really good.
yes.
They've got weapons. They've got a terrific wide receiver. We'll see what happens with Kyle Pitts, but if you're there, you could say, well, I want to keep him. Defense has a ton of talent.
Do you pay Kyle Pitts?
I'd probably franchise him for a year and then see where we're at, because the franchise tag is so cheap for a tight end. I think it's like $13 million, which is fine.
Yeah.
And then defensively, you got all kinds of tools. And if I could do it, I'd just keep Jeff Albrecht as my DC and just say, go nuts, and keep your kid away from the phone. So yeah, I just, from a overall talent standpoint, I think the Falcons are way closer to where you're going to be. And if you can get Michael Penix to work, great. Obviously, not having a first round pick sucks, but if Michael Penix and can't do it, then I'm going to go back and get a quarterback and have a much better roster. My worry with the Giants is, one, Jackson Dart not protecting himself.
Yeah.
But I've got a lot more holes to fill on that team. Now, granted, they have some really, really good players.
Mm-hmm.
Abdul Carter is awesome. Brian Burns is awesome. Dexter Lawrence is awesome. You are really good on the defensive line.
Yeah, the front is stupid.
Cardell Flott is a pretty good corner. But like after that, there's not a whole lot on defense. And then
Javon Holland blew out his ACL in the last game of the year. So
did he?
Next year's
that's the other big thing that's hanging over the Giants. All their best players
are hurt, coming off major injuries. Yeah.
Malik Neighbors, Javon Holland, Cam Scattaboo, Jackson Dart's health. Andrew Thomas missed a bunch of time. Like, that is worrying that you've got that many injury issues, because you could go there and think, oh man, this could be great. I'm just going to add talent and be great. And then you're just dinged up again and you're just screwed. But, Abdul Carter is very tempting, because man, I was right on that one. As far as, do you take Shedeur Sanders at 2 or Travis Hunter at 2 or Abdul Carter? I mean, come on, what are we doing? But they've got the thing with the Giants, and we've talked about this. I think they have a lot of really good individual players. Mm-hmm. I don't know how close they are to being a good team. Whereas I think the Falcons are really close to being a good team. You just got to obviously find the quarterback situation. Who knows? Maybe, Kirk Cousins is going to be out of there. Maybe you say, screw it. Hey, Malik Willis, you want to come down here and play quarterback? And maybe that's your move. I mean, I don't have a problem with working with Penix either, but I would absolutely I could absolutely see why Kevin Stefanski goes, man, this looks pretty good. I
was going to say with my next question, where do you want to see Stefanski end up? Because one scenario I'll throw out is the Raiders with the number 1 pick and Fernando Mendoza.
Well, him going to the Raiders would be helpful to me, because I think if he's not, he's going to end up on a team that's going to beat the brakes off the Browns next year, because the Browns play the Falcons, the Titans, and the Giants.
Yeah.
And if
they play everybody that has a coach available except the Cardinals, I think. Don't we play the Falcons too? Don't we play the South?
They do play the Falcons. I don't.
Yeah, it's literally everybody but the Cardinals, man. We're getting every.
They don't play the Raiders, do they?
What's that?
Do they play the? Do they play?
Yeah,
Raiders?
last play schedule, dude.
Oh, okay.
Come on now.
So there's no avoiding it. My nightmare, not that I dislike it for him. I think it'd be great for him. If he goes to Baltimore, it'd be great. I don't think it'll happen, but man, then again, maybe it will. I would not be shocked if he ends up in Tennessee, and Tennessee punishes us for basically rectifies their mistake, which was firing Mike Vrabel, which was dumb. Immediately realizing and go, oh my God, the Browns are going to bail us out of avoiding this cycle, and we're going to pick him. You love Cam Ward. They've got offensive line largely in place. We just need weapons.
That's one of the few ownership groups that are worse than Haslam.
It's not good.
That's tough.
Well, the thing with that is I keep thinking of them as going through Jimmy Haslam's early ownership arc.
Yeah,
you're just firing people left and right, and there's no rhyme or reason. You're just mad all the time that your team's not good, and you can't help but wonder why. So you just got to keep the cycle going. So I'll be curious to see where he ends up. Arizona, I would hope not. I don't think that's a good spot for anyone right this second. No spot. I think the Raiders is look. The Raiders and the Cardinals are the worst 2 jobs, because you have to play the NFC West and the AFC West, which absolutely sucks right now. You are getting just absolutely pilloried every week in divisional matchups.
The Chiefs are the 3rd team in the AFC East or West.
Yeah.
That's a tough division.
It's just awful if you're the Raiders. You also are a team that has been cash poor.
Yeah.
I think that is largely rectified because their stadium situation it's been a long enough that they're
well, and they changed the rules too, that you can get you can have that a small part of your ownership to basically let these big hedge funds come in and throw money around for you.
But the problem is I think the next worst job right after that is Cleveland, relative to that scenario. So Kevin Stefanski, I think he could do a lot of damage in Atlanta. That'd be really interesting if that's the way they want to go. what's fascinating and infuriating is every job that's opened, I've seen at least somebody who I find credible go, Kevin Stefanski would be great here, and I'm just sitting there getting angrier and angrier about it.
Yep. Boy, that's gonna be the theme of our emotions until we find somebody to take over, and he's legit, man. That's just the reality of it. As usual, Pete, it is always a pleasure, and thank you guys so much for sticking with us. It's always a pleasure to talk football with Pete and hang out with you guys and everything like that. We'll be back next Tuesday, obviously, with hopefully even more information to pour over with this coaching search. We can talk playoffs, college and pro. Either way, guys, thank you guys so much for sticking with us. Thank you to the OBR Network for hosting us, and we will catch you guys later, man. Happy Tuesday. Go Browns.